Welcome back to another episode of Holy Banter. This is Christina Steele.
And I'm Andrea Simpson. Today we are here with Ann Jones. She's been a parishioner at St. Alphonsus for 6 years. She is an amazing artist and an author who, with God's help, is still writing her story. So thanks for coming to talk to us today, Ann.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, we have so many questions for you. We know you in a few different capacities, but most recently you've agreed to help lead our Grieving with Great Hope group.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you have a lot of experience with grief.
Yeah.
You are a great proponent of living in a way where you focus on your faith and not your fear or your grief. So Christina and I would love to know more about how this all started for you, how your grief journey started.
Yeah. In 2011, my sister was diagnosed with a glioblastoma brain tumor, and she fought it for 5 months, and then she passed away on March 17th,
which happens to be
14 years ago.
10.
And that's Lisa, right?
Yeah, Lisa. And we were very, very close. I have 4 sisters, and we were the closest. We raised our kids together. We were on the phone a few times a day, helping each other through marriage. And we always ended up laughing at the end. We would make something funny out of it. And then my mom was a 22-year pancreatic cancer survivor, which doesn't really happen, but she had a Whipple procedure, and she lived 22 more years. Her life expectancy was 5 to 10, and she lived 22.
That's amazing.
So she was in assisted living, and she would go back and forth to the hospital. She'd get an infection, but she would always rally and come back. And I remember her saying, "Why doesn't God take me?" I would say, "Well, you must have something to teach me," which my dad had passed away suddenly in 2001. And we all thought, oh, maybe 6 months and Mom will be gone, because they were both orphans and were married for 57 years. And she just took up the challenge and ran with it. She would say, I do what I want, and I don't have a bedtime.
I love that.
That's cute.
When my sister passed away, she kind of gave up.
That just devastated her.
Yeah. She was like, what if I don't want to get better this time? You know, to
Her.
lose a child
Oh,
was
yeah.
just horrible.
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine.
And Lisa was very affectionate and loving and giving, and she just didn't get it. So 7 weeks after Lisa died, my mom died. And I was there with her, and we sang hymns and talked to her, and she passed very peacefully.
How was that loss compared to the loss of your sister?
You know, we expected my mom to go. It wasn't as hard, but she was a driving force. She was just something else.
Well, live 22 years with pancreatic cancer, she'd have to be.
Yeah.
And she didn't have a bedtime.
And she did what she wanted.
That's right.
That sounds
If she
great.
didn't want to eat dinner, she didn't make dinner.
That's
And if she
awesome.
wanted to watch something on TV, she didn't have to worry about my dad having the remote.
Freedom. Pure freedom is what it was.
So,
But that's looking at the positive,
yeah,
right?
when you're widowed, you have to.
And she was a pretty faith-filled person.
She was and she wasn't. They were Methodists when I was growing up. She was Baptist as a child and went to church by herself and got baptized.
Wow. She really is a
So-
spitfire.
So she knew God and loved God. My dad was an agnostic until he was in World War II, and he saw Catholic men dying in foxholes praying the rosary with a smile on their face.
Wow.
And he said, there's got to be something bigger than me out there. He was not the most faith-filled person, but he actually had a near-death experience. He had a dissecting aneurysm the day after Easter in 2000. And we were all praying. My mom was at the hospital. They lived in Florida, and my sister was down there. They came out after just a couple hours. It was supposed to take 6 to 9 hours. They came out and said, we got in there, and there was no aneurysm in there. And 3 people did echoes on him, and it wasn't there.
That's amazing.
So he would walk the beaches in Florida and say, God gave me a second chance. He had 18 more months of being able to just really appreciate life, and, I mean, they cracked his chest open and everything, you know? He's I remember calling him the next day, and I said, "How are you?" And he said, "Well, I just had a bed bath from a blonde and a brunette, so I'm doing great."
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my
Men are dirty
goodness.
to the
Yeah,
end.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
79, yeah.
But he didn't waste that, though. He didn't
No,
waste it.
no, and they were great people. They never met a stranger, either one of 'em.
That's amazing.
So my mom passed away on May 8th, and we had her funeral the Saturday, the 11th. It was the day before Mother's Day. Then we had my son's wedding coming up on the following Saturday, the 19th. So on Friday, we went to lunch with a bunch of people who were in from out of town for the wedding. And then Friday night, my son and daughter-in-law wanted to have just a pizza party. They didn't want a fancy thing. They wanted the people who were from out of town to be able to come,
Mhm.
not just the wedding party.
Yeah.
So we had a great, great time, and um, my granddaughter was there, and she called my husband daddy because her father wasn't in her life at that time.
Mhm.
So I remember her telling the waitress, "This is really my grandfather." I mean, she's like 4 years old.
Mm.
"This is really
Aw.
my grandfather, but I call him my dad." And the waitress said, "Yeah, I have the same thing. I call my grandpa dad." So we went home and we went out on the deck, and he had a glass of wine and was talking about how much he was looking forward to my daughter-in-law being part of our family. We went to bed, told each other we loved each other, and he said, "I'm gonna go out on the couch. I can't sleep." So that was a normal thing, and he would sleep half on and half off the couch. The kids would walk through to the kitchen, right in the refrigerator, and he would be snoring away. Well, that morning of the wedding, I woke up about 6:30, and at 6:50, my daughter, who was a nurse, said, "Oh my god, he's cold."
Mm.
So I ran out there, and he had died. He was on the floor. He looked like he was asleep.
Mm.
How old was he?
He was 54.
And his
Mhm.
name was Chris,
Yeah.
right?
And he was overweight, and he was diabetic, but he was under control, had blood pressure issues. We think it was sleep apnea that caused him to
Mm.
have a cardiac event.
Mm.
Um, I remember going out there, and the first thing that came to my head was, "You're with Jesus."
Mm.
But really, today?
And at first, that's a gift that was the first thing to your
Yeah,
mind.
and it was, and I hung on to that
Oh.
a lot. If you knew my husband, he would not want to be the center of attention. He would
Mm.
not wanna do this on this day. But, I had to call my sons and had to tell him that his dad was gone, and we decided to have the wedding anyway. It was the most surreal day of my life. I mean, I felt like I was in a Salvador Dali painting.
Sure.
One minute I'd be dancing, and the next minute I'd be like, "He's dead."
Uh,
It just didn't sink in. And when I see pictures of the way I look like a raccoon, my eyes are just black
oh.
I'm
circles,
sure.
from crying. But it was kind of a neat thing because everybody came to the house that was from out of town. My mother-in-law was at a hotel. I had to call the hotel and tell them. And so everybody came over, and the neighbors got us breakfast. It was a beautiful sunny day. We got through the day somehow. I mean, we kept interchanging the words funeral home and nursing home, wedding and
Oh.
Yeah.
funeral. We had therapists that some of the family had seen, and he was specialized in trauma. He was a great guy. He was a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, and he was a good, strong Christian man and prayed before every session. But
Mm.
he did what's called EMDR therapy.
I've had it.
Have you?
Yep.
And I know Father Travis has.
Mhm. Maybe explain what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, for some people, it's a little light that goes back and
Mhm.
forth. I like to close my eyes so I can visualize
Mhm.
things. So I used vibrating sensors in my hands, and they turn them up and down, and
Yeah.
and they have you go through the traumatic event and how you could better handle it. And for a lot of people, I don't know how it works for everybody else, but for me, all this scripture just flooded my brain from my years as a fundamentalist when I learned all this scripture. And it just gave me such hope that God was going to take care of me because I was a stay at home mom. This was my wage earner. What was I going to do?
Yeah.
I was 52. So the EMDR, I only had 4 sessions, and he
Yeah.
released me. And he said a lot of people feel guilty because they feel so much better so quick. But I want you to know that your people would want you to feel better, wouldn't they?" And I was
Right.
like, "Yeah, they really would. They would." So I determined that I was gonna, live life to the fullest and
So during those 60 days, I mean, of course, I'm sure for everyone, Job comes to mind. Did you ever say, like, what the heck, God, or what's going on? Or,
I
I mean, how did that
did.
impact your
I
faith?
did, but, I really had because of
Sorry.
the way that my mom had lived and my sister had died so quickly, I really knew in my heart that if it's not your time to go, you're not gonna go. And if it is your time to go, nothing's gonna keep you here. So I was never angry at God. They say all those 5 stages of grief, but those are really refer to the person who's dying, that they go through all those stages. Real grief is just kinda like spaghetti bowl of everywhere.
Mm.
There's no straight lines. It's all over the place. So, yeah, I would wake up in a panic, and I had a few neat little things. I was on my husband's computer one day, his laptop, and on my AOL account, which was my original email, I still use it, up pops an email from my husband.
Oh,
He's been gone 2 months.
no.
It was nothing but a photograph of the 2 of us on our favorite beach the last time we were there.
Well, that's kinda weird.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I took the picture, so
Wow.
it would've been me sending to him
Yeah.
normally, but I just kinda knew that he was with me. I did work as a portrait artist for 10 years before he had died. I did shows, and I had just stopped doing them because I had this idea that I wanted to do. So I had done 46 weekends a year as arts and crafts shows and
Wow.
mall shows and all these festivals and different things. So I probably did 1,000 a year. I'm not
Wow.
kidding.
Wow.
I mean, not all of them were color. Some of them were just
Mhm.
black and white sketches, but um, it's like a sport or an instrument.
Yeah.
The more you do, the better you get.
And you did this while homeschooling and raising your children.
Yeah,
Okay.
and raising my family. So I was really tired of setting up and tearing down by myself and traveling. And I wanted out of that, but I needed to do something to supplement the income. And I talked to a friend and she was like, "We have this thing here called Flashes of Hope." She works at Riley. And she said they take black and white pictures of our cancer kids and they put makeup on them and dress them up. And sometimes they crop off their little bald heads, but
Mm.
sometimes these are the last photos these
Mm.
families have of these kids. And she said it's a nonprofit. And I really enjoy doing portraits of people who have passed away. I feel like people value them. So I started looking into it. When my husband died, I was in pretty much a panic and shock. And my sister said, "I'll help you set up this nonprofit." So I was like, that sounds like a great idea to me. And so we got together a board of directors and ended up with my spiritual director from when I converted as the
Mm.
vice president, and my husband's best friend from high school. They were still good friends, and he was the president, and my sister is the secretary, and we had Chris's cousin was the treasurer at the time. We had a funeral home owner as
Oh, that's
part of
cool.
the,
Mhm.
original board. So we started it up October 30th. And on my anniversary the following year, we got approval for the 501c3, and an article came out in the paper about us.
And what are you
So,
called?
face to face fine art commemorative expressions, which is like FACE, but
Mhm.
we call it face to face.
But you only do portraits for people who've experienced a traumatic loss.
Sudden,
Yeah.
unexpected, or traumatic loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a child, any
Okay.
child.
Mm. And this is free to the families,
Yes.
correct?
So, yeah, we have to raise money for that. And
Yeah, the first time I'd heard of you was when you did, Deb Perry's picture, which
Deacon
was,
Perry's
yeah,
wife.
very beautiful.
Thank you.
So how long have you been doing that now?
14 years in October. It's 13 now.
That's amazing.
Uh,
But you were doing that before
I was
all
doing
this loss.
portraits,
Okay.
but I wasn't doing face
Okay.
to face.
So this came out of your experience of grief.
It started out with nobody was sick or dying when I had the idea, but I felt like God orchestrated a lot of things
Mm.
before
Yeah.
my husband's death. Like we went on a vacation, the whole family went.
Mhm.
And, you know, it just was God's doing.
Mhm.
So
Well, so you wrote a book about your experience.
I try to give it to the recipients of the portraits or anybody that I know that's, going through a time with grief.
What was it like writing the book?
It took me 5 years, and it was pretty much journaling.
It's called Balm for the Heart. So what
My journey through loss and bereavement.
and so Andrea's read it. So what
I have.
It talks about how I dealt with the grief. When you're faced with tragedy of any kind or a storm or a valley, you can run to God
Mhm.
or you can run away from God. I chose to run to God, and I strongly advise people to do that because there's really no hope in running away from Him. I also started going to adoration, and that I journal when I'm there and I write down everything I'm feeling, and then I sit in silence for a little while and listen to what God's speaking to me, and I write that down. And He has never failed to show up when
Yeah.
I show up.
So what are things that you learned you should not say to someone when they're grieving?
Um,
That might help
I know
people.
how you feel.
Mm,
Mm.
How
Even
are you doing?
mm.
We laugh about that at the grief groups because you just paste a smile on your face and you go, I'm doing fine,
yeah.
because you don't want to know how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm dying. I'm dying inside, okay?
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's the way you feel for a while. I mean, I used to say, "Please, just take me with him. I just wanna
Mm.
go." I would
Yeah.
never do anything,
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
but I didn't wanna be here,
Yeah.
and you have to search for God's purpose for your life. I mean, this is another thing. I was a wife and mother of 5 kids. My youngest child was gonna be a senior in high school. All the rest had flown the nest. We were getting ready to, be empty nesters. And suddenly I'm not a wife. I'm really not a mother raising children anymore.
Finding that
What
identity.
am I?
Mhm.
What am I? I was a homemaker and I didn't have anybody to make a home for, really.
Mhm.
So yeah, I say people are like, "Oh, I love this portrait of my family member," but I always say, "I probably got more out of it than you did."
Mm.
Because I pray for the people when I'm doing them, and I pray that the Lord will bless it and make it a source of good memories and not bad. I mean, one lady, her grandson was in the hospital with tubes running in and out of him. That's the last picture she has in her head of
Mhm.
him. So
Mhm.
we did him sitting in a bucket of water and
No.
Mm.
laughing and.
So, not all of us are artists like you.
Mhm.
So, what can we do for someone who's grieving? How can we help?
I will tell you a couple things that people did for me that have just stuck in my mind. And I mean, people showed up at my door with trays of cold cuts. I probably had 5 of them in the refrigerator at one time. And they'd say, I didn't know what to do, but I just cooked. One of my really good friends came and she's like crying to me. Why are
Oh.
you not crying? Why am I? you know,
Mhm.
but she's the one that on the day of the funeral, she did not go, but she and her daughter came to my house and cleaned it from top to bottom. I mean, I had
Oh.
people sleeping on the floor.
Yeah.
I had all kinds of family members in and out and clothes everywhere and dishes everywhere. And
That's amazing.
yeah, that's the best thing.
Yeah.
Send them a DoorDash card,
Yeah.
gift card. I mean, if you don't make meals, which I don't
Mhm.
anymore, I'm cooking for one here. So, um, I do that or, just be there for the person. Don't say, "Call me if you need
Yeah,
anything," because
exactly.
that just doesn't happen.
And they're
You're
not
not
gonna
gonna
call.
reach out to
Yeah.
somebody. I have a couple prayer partners that I still go to, not about grief, but about life situations, and yet you don't wanna ask
Mhm.
for help.
Mhm.
When you're so lost in a fog,
Mhm.
they call it grief brain,
Mm.
Mhm.
that you can't really think to ask what you need. Um, I remember learning I had to put 2 alarms on my phone for every event
Mm.
because and if I could do more, I probably should have because I forgot major things. And
Yeah.
I'm sure.
you walk into a room and you can't remember why you're there
Mhm.
and
Mm.
you think, I'm losing it. And that was one of the things that the first grief group that I went to was called Wounded Healers. And they had a video of, symptoms of grief, and different psychologists would talk and about grief, and you realize you're not crazy,
Mm.
because everybody has these crazy thoughts when they lose somebody. And then they would break into groups of, people who were grieving the loss of a spouse, of a
Hmm,
child, a suicide or addiction loss, um, and I made lifelong friends. I've traveled with some, and,
that's nice.
we're still close,
Mhm.
close friends 14 years later. So 9 years after I lost my husband and my sister and my mom, I lost my 37-year-old daughter
Mm.
to acute fentanyl poisoning. She was in addiction, but I don't think she would have knowingly taken fentanyl.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, and she had an 11-year-old daughter.
Mm.
Her significant other, my granddaughter's father, had died in 2015 of an overdose. So she was severely depressed and using, and it, you know, I was there. The Lord got me there before she died, and I was able to pray over her, put a rosary that was blessed by the Pope on her head, and told her, that we loved her and we were proud of her and that we wanted her back, but if she couldn't come back, that she should just know that we would take care of her daughter. And 10 minutes later, her heart stopped.
Mm.
And I had to watch them do CPR for 20 minutes, and they kept saying, "Do you want us to continue? Do you want us to continue?"
Mm.
They had already told us that, there was no way she could have any brain function.
Yeah.
I mean, they had spent hours trying to get her heartbeat going regularly.
And throughout all of this, what could have been debilitating 4 times over, started a nonprofit, and you've painted over 300 paintings so far?
Mhm.
And raised a granddaughter?
Yeah. I always say, I have a group of ladies here at the church that we pray for each other, and they have prayed us through some really tough times.
Mhm,
And people say, "Oh, you did such a great job." No, really,
mhm.
I was just the one who didn't leave.
Mm.
That's all I'll take credit for is I didn't leave.
You're
Uh,
still here.
yeah.
In the back of your book, there's a picture
Oh,
of your face.
when my daughter died, I knew about kintsugi, and it's
Explain,
an
yeah,
old
explain.
Japanese art where they take rosin and mix it with gold powder and cement this piece of ceramic pottery back together, when it's been broken. And there are, there are holes sometimes, but we say that's where the light can shine through. I did a lot of them. I sold some. I gave a lot of them away.
Portraits or the
The
actual
pottery,
pottery?
pottery.
Okay.
Mm.
I still do them occasionally. I have a few at my house. And I did a portrait of myself, and then I painted the gold cracks on it. So
Mm.
that's what you're looking at.
And so what
And
does that mean to you, that painting with the
I've
cracks on
been
it?
broken, but God's put me back together like Humpty Dumpty.
Mhm. In a beautiful way, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think my life has more meaning maybe now than it
Mm.
did.
Why is that?
Just because I can hopefully help other people
Mhm,
who are going through. I mean, you have no idea until
mhm.
you lose a spouse or a child
Yeah.
what it's like. And there are broken people walking around, the walking dead,
Mhm.
Mm.
and they don't know how to get help. And I mean, a lot of the people, I've established a lot of relationships with those 300 portrait recipients. And some of them start out really angry at God, don't want to
Mhm.
hear about God, don't want to hear what I have to say about God. And then I see them come around, and, I was in some chat groups like on Facebook for parents who've lost a child, and I had to get out because there were people just, my life is never going to be the same. I don't care what you say. You know, I-
Mm.
I'm,
That's sad.
I just want to not be here. And you have to move forward.
Mhm.
One of the big things at that first grief group was you are a survivor, not a victim.
Oh, I like that.
Mhm.
And I've tried real hard to be that. I mean, I can't say that I don't have days where I just want to stay in bed.
Mhm.
Um, and I say, why all this loss? But it's not mine to question why. It's
Mm.
it's God's will, and I just have to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked you before this, your view of suffering. You said, I don't have an answer. And I mean, I don't think any of us do, but
No.
it is amazing to me how suffering, I mean, they always say God permits suffering because he can bring good out of
Matthew
it.
Kelly's book
Uh huh.
on the Eucharist, consecration to the
Mm
Eucharist,
hmm.
and today's reading was about suffering and how, Jesus suffered
Yeah.
for us.
And I think that's what we miss because I know I went through a phase where I was angry with God. And then you read scripture and it's all over that we are going to experience suffering and pick up your cross. And again, you have the choice to pick it up or run away. And we just don't always get that message that that's part of it.
I just wanted to be with my people eventually. I wanted to be as close to God as I could
Yeah.
be so I can go to heaven
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
they are.
Mhm.
And I know my husband had a really strong faith. I know my daughter believed one of the last texts I got from her. I was like, I'm going to meditation, which was
Mhm.
adoration, a few times a week. And it really is good to just sit in silence. And she said, well, it looks good on you, Mom, but
Mm.
you're religious and I'm not. I believe in God, but I'm
Mhm.
not religious. So I just let it go. The priest did come, unfortunately, after she passed and absolved her of her sins and prayed over
Mhm.
her. So I believe that she's in heaven. I've had lots of confirmations of that. I have a thing I've written called The Brambles of Addiction, and
Mm.
it talks about how sheep get into brambles to get the
Mhm.
berries and they fight to get out. And that's the way addiction is. They get into it for the high
Mhm.
and they can't get out. And the more they wrestle against it, these sheep strangle themselves
Mhm.
Mm.
unless the shepherd comes and cuts them out.
Yeah.
And I did a picture of a sheep with
That's
brambles.
really beautiful.
Yeah. So I just feel like, and a lot of people came to me and said, Jesus left the 99 and went after your one lost sheep and put her on his shoulders and carried her home.
With mental health, you just and we believe God's merciful. We can't just judge that. We don't know what's going on in
Hmm.
people's hearts.
She had the biggest heart too.
Mhm.
She,
Yeah.
but I do think one of the factors for addiction is that they don't feel connected.
Mhm.
In
Mm.
last week's revival, the
Mhm.
last night, he talked about,
Oh, yeah.
and I had several people come up for prayer. I was on that prayer team. I'm really lonely.
Oh.
Mm.
And the church has got to reach out. 26 times in the Bible, it tells us to take care of the widows and the orphans.
I know, and I get very frustrated by, our society just doesn't prioritize community anymore, and I don't understand why. I know Catholics, that's something that we've just lost touch with is that sense of why community is important.
Yeah. So when I did the Grieving with Great Hope with Mike and Sarah Einhurst, they really created a sense of community
Mhm.
because we all shared a lot. Mike would come in with questions about how do you feel about this now that your person's gone? And we all have a bond from being in that
Yeah.
group. And many of us went back for
Mhm.
subsequent, sessions. So I think that's important. With
Yeah. We do have Grieving with Great Hope coming up, and you're gonna be leading it for us in April. Would you encourage someone who's done it before to come back?
Absolutely, I've already talked to a couple of people that were in it when I was in it that are coming back.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a fresh loss. It can be 20 years ago. We do portraits for people. I mean, I did one of a guy who died 50 years before, but he had a special needs daughter who was at the end of her life. And her sister felt like if she could see a picture of her dad,
Oh.
it would be comforting to know that she was going to go be with him. And
So you're
um,
still journeying through too.
yeah,
You're leading,
you don't ever
but
get
you're
to quit.
still right.
Oh, I've arrived. I no longer feel sad about.
Yeah. Comes in waves.
I mean, this year my husband would have retired
Wow.
Yeah.
in 2025 and we would have been off on a new life and
Mm.
that's not happening.
Is it ever hard seeing people your age who are empty nesters who can go travel the world together that you lost that?
It's hard to see people who are in worse health than my husband ever was
Mm.
and they're still married and they're still doing
Yeah.
but I've just learned to just be thankful that they have
Mhm.
each other. I used to have a hard time on Facebook
Yeah.
congratulating them.
I don't even like being on Facebook.
So
Yeah.
how long does it take you to do a portrait?
I, all right, I'll just tell you. I'm two things your mother told you never to be
Oh.
fast and I'm cheap.
Ah!
What's that mean?
I don't charge as much as a lot of people do.
Oh.
It just comes
It
naturally to you.
I can
We've
do
done
one
it
in
so
an
much. Yeah.
afternoon or 2 afternoons. It
Yeah.
just depends on
Yeah.
how I feel and time. I've got one sitting in my living room right now that's half done, and I need to just get back to it.
Mhm.
It is therapy for me to do artwork, and I'm talking to myself right now. I need to just every day do something.
Yeah, it's an outlet.
Yeah.
That's cool. I always wish I got a C in drawing in high school, so I don't think I have an artistic gene, which I argued with the teacher. I said, "How can you grade my God-given talent?" I mean, it seems really unfair, but
Of course you argued with the teacher.
I've always envied people who have artistic talent or even musical talent. It'd just be such a nice outlet.
You know, my husband never had to take an art class. He could draw out of his head anything.
That's amazing.
Did a painting of the sister ship of the Titanic, the Mauritania. It has every wire and bolt and,
That's amazing.
and out of his head. And
Cool.
he was a military historian, so he was into all that
That's
stuff.
really cool.
But it was not his passion. History was his passion, military history.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
So I had to work at it. I didn't start out being able to do portraits that were very good. I do remember taking a class in junior high at IUSB, and we had live models, and I did a portrait, and I was like, wow, that's kind of nice. So that's when I started.
Mm.
And so I've been doing them for over 50 years.
That's amazing.
The more you do, the better you get.
Right?
Well, maybe when I retire,
Yeah.
I'll try again.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic.
Well, we are really grateful that you came to talk to us today. Your story is just so, fortunately and unfortunately, so interesting. I mean, obviously, a lot of it's God, but a lot of it is you stopping to listen and talk to Him and journey through all of it with Him and trust in Him to know that there's a purpose for you on the other
And
side.
He is faithful.
Yeah,
He
for
never
sure.
leaves us or forsakes us. He's always there. He loves us more than we can even comprehend. And that's what my journals are full of.
Yeah.
Just all these messages of hope.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone who feels like I don't have that kind of relationship with God?
You don't start with an hour, I can tell you that.
You mean an adoration?
Yeah. Or even journaling or
Yeah.
praying. Just little bites. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so I remember listening to Matthew Kelly's testimony. I was in my car, and it was on relevant radio in Northwest Indiana. And I was driving to a destination, and I got there and I had to shut it off before it was over. Well, later that evening, I got in the car and it was on at the exact
No
same
way.
spot.
God
And
needs you to
and
hear
it was
this.
about him being a high schooler, and he played basketball with a priest, and the priest said, just spend 10 minutes a day in the church in silence. And so he started with that, and he's got this full-blown ministry
Yeah.
worldwide.
Wow. And in your book, you do say a few times about how you live by faith and not by fear, and you make your decisions that way. Or at least you try to. You try to. And that really has stuck with me. Just as a reminder, if I'm scared, and God tells us how many times in the Bible,
Fear
do
not,
not be
fear not,
afraid.
fear not,
Yeah.
fear not.
I need lots of reminders.
One thing that I really think is important is to spend a lot of time being thankful, like
Dr.
this-
Italy
like
said,
I-
I thought that was very poignant.
And I do the same thing. I'm like, for hot and cold running water, for heat and air conditioning,
Yeah.
for, all these things.
Yeah.
But when you focus on what and who you have
Yeah.
right now,
hmm
you're not looking over your shoulder at who and what you used to.
Yeah. I like to, because the question was, how do you find joy in the midst of suffering? And he said gratitude. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But for me, it's really important because I could sit and say, I had this big house
Yeah,
on a golf
exactly.
course, and I'm
Mhm.
living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I had 5 kids that were all home, and they're all grown and
Yeah.
have their own lives.
I think the point you made, which is something to remember, is like we have a choice.
Then there's memories too that some people never had a child to
Mm.
lose.
Yeah.
Some people never had their one true love.
Mm-hmm.
I had
Mhm.
37 years
Yeah.
with my daughter, 36 years with my husband.
One of my favorite quotes, and I don't know what psalm it is, but it talks about like your life, kind of like it talks about how life is like it's like the span of a breath. Some have a long one basically, and some have a short one. I don't
Mhm.
remember what the words are, what psalm it is, but it always strikes me because we're not guaranteed a long life.
No. There are people that say you're guaranteed 70 or 80 years.
Well, it says that in the Bible.
Yeah.
Some live, the strong live 70, some live 80, but obviously not everyone
And
does. I think, especially in our modern society, in the old days, people, all of our grandparents probably had 12 kids and saw half of them die as children. So death and suffering was just something that they were familiar with, where in our day, we're just not. And suffering something we want to put in a closet, not talk about. And it's such a part of our lives. And that perhaps is why people are so lonely, is like they think what they're experiencing is not normal when it is. And we
Mhm.
need to not make it such a bad thing to talk about.
yeah, and community needs to
Yes, yeah,
step up.
for sure.
When was the last time we invited a single person over for dinner?
Yeah, or a widow or someone,
Mhm.
yeah, who's alone.
He sets the solitary in families.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Anne, for coming on. Yeah, I think
Yes.
Thank you for
you'll
having
bless
me.
bless a lot of people with your story.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We're so grateful that you're going to help us out. And you said this in your book. If you lead a group like this, you become a professional griever. So
Oh, yeah.
you're welcome. I've gotten you your professional title
You're
now.
Yeah,
definitely
I
gonna
was an amateur griever, and then I was a mediocre griever, and now
Mhm.
I'm a professional griever.
No, I
Yeah.
think I mean,
Professional survivor.
this is what you're supposed to do. I mean, you went through this and
Let's
God.
hope that something good can come from.
Exactly. I mean, you're gonna be able to walk and accompany other people through that, and you know what not to say, and
Well, I hope I do, but yeah,
yeah,
probably stick my foot in my
I'm
mouth a
sure we
lot
all do, but
too.
yeah. Anyway, but thank you.
Thank you.